Hello, friends. This is Morgan Strawn Komnick here, the author of the Hunter and the Bringer series, amongst other books. Thank you for coming to support our Kickstarter. And now I am proud to introduce for your listening and entertainment pleasure the wonderful Lexi Evans and Logan Anair, narrating book 2 of Monsters and Mortals. Here's the sample. Please enjoy and be eager for more. I know I am.
We weren't sure if possession was involved yet or not. After Jeremy and mine's latest blowout at the Hunter's Gym, Kessler and Galen received a direct order from Chief that we needed to investigate a monstrum attack, a tragic massacre, and kidnappings that aligned with what we know about the spree this Lamia has been commencing. We took the Charger, a sleek and large fancy helicopter that belongs to the Bringers, heading to the boot of Italy, the reports saying the monstrum was heading to the coast of Greece. And Greece would have a slew of problems for us, as it is littered with monstrums of numerous myths. A small wave of turbulence snapped me from the mindless flashes of all that had happened. My eyes watered annoyingly. I wiped them away, yearning to lose myself in the nothingness of the sky that was drowning in the start of a stormy sunset. With this movement, a glint of the final words I heard at the organization rang strongly in my ears. When I was leaving after we inspected the Charger and did our supplies checklist, Madame Edric, the mother of my chief who is a medical leader in her Cherokee tribe, beckoned me over with a stem of lilac. It was hard to focus on her, but I drank in her kindly image, ashamed when I absorbed the sadness in her eyes that were gazing solely at me. Like a grandmother, she patted my hand, its warmth drawing me to heed her serious tone, words I knew were spoken to her through her ancestral spirits. Fog will obscure your path, but you can never evade your journey. I know you. You will never halt the walk, but venture forward, cautiously, slowly looking over your shoulder. The only real question I have for you is this. Will you plod, or will you fly in order to find the one who dances with you?
Where are we heading to, calculator boy?
The scratchiness of my weapons master's voice lightly tapped me out of the mental fog in which the madam's riddle engulfed me. I inclined my head slightly in order to hear any new agenda on our endeavor. I was getting tired of sinking into this brain pit. I could almost hear Kessler clawing into his armrest, his nails digging into the leather from nerves. Crackingly, he told us the latest information.
You see, we're going to Bari, in Italy, to the scene of the incident. The Italian division of the Hunters has blocked it off for us from the police and public after an investigation of their own. The scene was on a cliffside outside one of its popular beaches?
Hearing Jeremy speak was like a surge of electricity jolting through every cell, standing my arm hair on end. Kessler gulped audibly, loud enough that I didn't have to move to look at him.
Well, yes, but the city itself is famous for its white cliffs, even having a cliffside restaurant. Many of their houses are built on top of them as well. The attack was not directly in a tourist area, but about half a mile away. We're lucky that it was late at night, but there was a celebration going on near the semi-secluded cliff of about 40 innocents. Bad luck for them. An excellent meal and pleasure trip for this bastard Lamia.
Galen finished in his own crude, but not untruthful way. I could feel Jeremy's gaze bearing into my cheek, and it was getting more difficult to blankly stare through the looking glass. I yearned to be Alice and hop into a new realm, even a trippy one like Wonderland. At least I was used to doing 6 impossible to mortals things before breakfast already. Steadying myself, I let out a long sigh and focused my vision on the dull plush padding wall of the fake seat in front of me. So, our objective is to meet the cacciatori at this location of the incident and do our thing. Then we will compare findings at their base if allowed access. My wispy voice sounded like it was in a cave somewhere, but there was my usual authoritative mission tone I used. Lord, it felt like I aged 100 years. That took way more effort than it should have. Jeremy had his mouth partly opened, gawking at me while his hands squeezed the armrest until his knuckles were white. I refused to look at him head on, but I kept an eye on him now, pretending to be indifferent about him being here, although, in actuality, I loathed and feared him being near me. The squeaking of his seat made me give him a small percentage more of my sight to notice he was leaning forward by his torso, but his limbs were glued in place, making him look gangly.
I know we've been dealing with this vampire case first, but this happened on their soil, and I would guess you guys can share information. But why would we not be welcome to return to their base with them after our investigation? For cross-referencing, it makes sense.
I stared ahead, not wanting to state the obvious to the rest of us in the helicopter. But I guess Galen couldn't resist, being the oh-so-lovable ass he was. He snorted, then honored Jeremy with the answer.
We can get in just fine. You? That'll be a tricky one.
Jeremy looked back and forth between all three of us, dragging his sentence out like the words were sticking to the roof of his mouth.
Yeah, I could see that if this was a normal case, but our branches decided for us to work together. So I'm a part of this assignment. By default, I should be able to have at least basic entry since I have as much experience, knowledge, and exposure to this monster as Agent Hemingway.
His eyes were bouncing between all of us, not sure where to land. Kessler yelped and ducked his head down, twiddling his thumbs from stressed nerves. I was still refusing to acknowledge him in the aircraft. So, once again, Galen had to break it to him in his gentle way.
Look here, High School Musical. By some fluke with God and the powers of nature, we needed to work together this one time to snuff out this SOB monstrum. I'm still not sure what you bring to the table, but our boss is agonized over this never-before ordeal. Just because we are forced to see you PETA for monsters in our halls, biting our tongues each encounter, doesn't mean the other branches around the world are going to agree, nor do they legally have to. They have their own rules. In fact, I can't see Chief Beryl going around and blabbing her jaws about how we have a bringer partnered with our lady fair over there for an assignment. So, if they don't invite you in, don't get all butthurt. Leave your ego and pride at the door and chill. Remember what you're here for. And if I hear any more complaining, I will sew your trap myself, and I can tell you, I'll use a rusty dagger instead of a needle to do it.
And the Razzie for most motivational speech goes to Jeremy. To my surprise, didn't argue, throw a fit, or even interrupt. He just listened and absorbed Galen's bluntly honest words. After a dragging 20 seconds, he threw his body hard back on his plush seat, tossed his hands in the air, and moaned.
Well, good to know now how picky you hunters are, even internationally. Damn.
His tone was slightly amused, but also hurt and annoyed. Still, his focus was true, the same as ours. Stopping this Lamia as quickly as possible. I leaned my head once more on the cool glass. Half of me longed to land soon, to get my bearings. But once on the ground, I would have to hit my mission running. And I had a feeling once we started the sprint, there would be no pit stop. We were in ancient monstrum territory now. A harsh howl brushed past the window and entangled the helicopter in a rumbling sound, the gales buckling the machine slightly. To most, This would seem like a flash of extreme turbulence or the dawning of a windstorm. However, my ears perked up on instinct, sensing the otherworldly wrongness of this gust. My mind became alert in seconds, a surprise with the heavy mental fog in which I was drowning. The seat I was in squeaked in protest when I straightened up to better get my bearings. Kessler and Galen looked a bit surprised by the sudden vibrations of the aircraft, but their eyes gave nothing away. Jeremy must have felt what I did, for he shifted in his seat as well, studying the direction from which the wind was coming. I suppose all that top-notch training meant he was as keen as I was about feeling the darkness, the invisible wrongness that monstrum's auras tend to radiate in the shadows. Jerk on a stick craned his head without overly moving from his gripping the armrest position towards his hole of a window to gaze at the ocean below. After 5 seconds of him trying to close his mouth, he swiveled his head back to face me dead on, his sea glass eyes draining of color and looking like rainwater.
You guys may want to take a look out there. The sea is a foamy swirl of roughness.
I didn't think twice about taking his suggestion to heart, hopping out of my seat so I could land on my knees to get a better view. Well, I have to admit, Darrington's description was indeed accurate to the point of chilling poetic. The deep blue waves churred in anger, the current so strong that the forces were swirling in many spirals on top of each other, confused on where to go, but wanting to dominate the waters around it. The middle point of the froth was sinking deep into itself, easily able to fit several 10-story buildings all side by side. It looked hella bad. As I pressed my face oh so attractively to the glass, whips of wind wrapped around the blades of the charger and tugged on them for dear life on my side. We all fell flat on the ground, the helicopter leaning towards Jeremy and Galen's side. For minor support, I grabbed the metal leg of my chair that was bolted down, my hands going numb to keep from ramming into Jeremy's gut on the other side. Galen was concocting a slew of curses as if performing a spell, and Kessler was trying not to whimper as he focused on searching for pieces of his equipment, counting off the keys he was finding from his typewriter. At this time, our pilot was able to get the charger mostly back in control after a minute. I was surprised we heard him with the roaring gales hitting the metal, but he did holler in distress soon after.
I don't know what to do!
Well, that's never reassuring to hear. Another wave of air punched through the helicopter, and I somersaulted backward with the force, slamming into Jeremy, who was on his side under his seat's walkway to the window. He grunted and then gave me a strained smile, guilty delight blinking a small light in his dull green eyes.
Thanks for dropping in, my lady.
I ignored his advance to talk to me, grateful my hunter's will to fight was so strong. Get off me! I shoved his face away from me and got on my knees, ready to attempt to crawl over him so I could get a better view of the raging ocean from his side. I didn't get far in my travels. Before I lifted my knee to step over him, the helicopter buckled hard again and I was dragged down, Jeremy catching me awkwardly in his arms. We were tangled on our sides in a half-sitting position, forced to gawk at each other. My fury at not having control of my limbs and being held by this guy was making my face uncomfortably warm.
Back again? How can I help you this time, princess?
Again, his voice and expression were strained, but he was trying to get back to our original routine, a more comedic one in extreme situations. I wasn't sure I had the patience for this, and the fact we were getting attacked in the air was not a good place to test his theory. I really didn't like flying or water. I felt trapped. Let me fucking get past you! I exclaimed with ire before even giving him a chance to react, this time crawling over him before I was beaten by Mother Nature again. A massive wave shot up from the ocean below and smacked into the window, white foam sliding violently down the glass like a handprint. The boom from the contact shook the flying machine we were encased in, but luckily didn't shake us more. Still, the fact that a wave could shoot up with such precision to touch a helicopter made it clear that Mother Nature was being altered by a nasty puppet master. Jeremy placed his palms flat on the wall of the Charger on either side of my waist, spread out so he wasn't touching me, but I could feel his body heat catty-corner from behind. The scene in front of my fishbowl was able to distract me from the fact he was so close. Well, about 95% of my mind, at least.
That's one mother trucker wave out there.
He whistled lowly, his voice grumbling. Psst, obviously, it's not natural, eggs for brains. I snarked after a heavy sigh, our eyes glued to the storm raging intensely in the real world, searching for any clues to what we were dealing with and how we could get out without endangering Kessler and our pilot. Galen could take care of himself.
Son of a bitch.
Speaking of devils, Galen lashed out with his teeth mashed together. I could hear him and Kessler shuffling to regain balance, but I dared not look at them. The vastness of the hole from the sea was expanding and becoming the color of pitch, a void of nothingness. However, from the rumble of the world and now near-deafening howling of the wind, I knew this was not the case. As if my thoughts called the beast, a shadowed mass erupted from the enraged ocean, bursting from the waves with a vengeance. The monstrum that emerged from it was easily 60 feet tall, nearly flying out of the water. It was easily as thick as a whale, but was also somehow lean like a Chinese serpent of legend. Segmented into coils of murky blue and seaweed green scales, it roared with a disgusting voice, its fangs easily as tall as Jeremy. Purple, thick saliva was dripping and plopping loudly into the sea. Embedded above its filmy yellow eyes was a fuzzy cluster of fur. A forked tongue licked the air in time with its razor-sharp flippers and cat-like claws. Cetus, I breathed out, awe and irritation ringing in my tone.
Not familiar with that one.
Jeremy stated without shame, as if it was a simple fact. Of course he didn't. It's the sea serpent from the Greek story of Perseus, where he rode on Pegasus to slay the monstrum to save his future wife, Andromeda. Hercules was also said to encounter one. I'm not sure if there was only one or it's an ancestor, but this guy is a real deal. The bastard is far from home, too. Jarvis Zero clicked his tongue, glancing at the monstrosity outside, but his eyes were lighter than I had seen them in a while.
Leave it to you, my vanilla cupcake, to know the origin of all the Greek mythology just by looking at this demonic creature.
I rolled my eyes at his response.